I have always believed that every mistake carries within it a recipe for something greater. Not a lesson buried in vague inspiration, but a precise, functional formula for how to move better the next time. When I was 25 years old, I made so many mistakes that I sometimes sat alone at night and genuinely questioned whether I would ever do anything. I failed my university entrance examinations 3 times. I was rejected from more than 30 different positions, including fast food chains that most people would never even consider a career ambition. And yet, if you ask me today whether I regret any of those failures, the answer would be an unequivocal no. Each one of them taught me something specific, something actionable, something that directly shaped the entrepreneur and the person I eventually became. This is the message I carry to every young person who stands at the threshold of their ambition, hesitating because they are afraid of what failure might cost them. Do not be afraid to make mistakes. Every mistake is a teacher. And in the early years of your career especially, the willingness to experiment and dare is not just encouraged, it is essential. The sooner you fail, the faster your instincts develop. The faster your instincts develop, the stronger your foundation becomes. And the stronger your foundation, the more capable you are of building something that genuinely lasts. There is no version of real success that arrives without obstacles. I have said it many times, and I will say it again here. Success is not something you receive. It is something you construct brick by brick out of the mistakes you are willing to examine honestly and overcome with deliberate intention. What I want you to understand is that every setback I encountered left a mark on me. I will not pretend it did not. The rejections were real. The discouragement was real. The moments of genuine doubt were real, but none of them stopped me. Not one of them made me retreat. In fact, looking back at the full arc of that period, I can see clearly that each closed door was doing something for me that an open door never could. It was building resolve. It was building clarity. It was eliminating the paths that were never truly mine to walk and redirecting my attention toward the one that was. With every no I received, I became more certain, not less, that something of greater magnitude was waiting ahead. Not because the universe was obligated to reward my persistence, but because I refused to stop moving toward the thing I believed in. What kept me going during those years was a question I returned to again and again. If I did not persist, who else would do it for me? The answer was always the same: no one. The responsibility for the dream was mine entirely. No mentor was going to carry it. No institution was going to rescue it. No circumstance was going to make the path suddenly smooth and obvious. That understanding, held clearly and without illusion, is what sustained me through the periods when every external signal suggested, I should give up. So, if you are just beginning your journey, hear this: failures are not the end of the line. They are the beginning of something new. The thing that separates those who only dream from those who eventually achieve is not talent, and it is not privilege. It is the way they respond to their mistakes. Every time you fall, ask yourself one honest question: what can I learn from this? Because it is in that question, asked consistently and answered honestly, that you will discover the true depth of your own strength. Every mistake you treat as a teacher is a step closer to the life you are working toward. The leader you follow shapes the professional you become. When I was young, I knew very little about business in any formal sense. What drove me was not expertise, but curiosity and a deep desire to understand how the world actually worked beneath its visible surface. But one realization arrived early and never left me. The leader you choose to follow matters far more than the name of the organization on your employment contract. I did not select my early opportunities based on company reputation or prestige. I chose them based on the individuals standing at the front of the room, the thinkers, the ones whose minds I wanted proximity to, whose frameworks I wanted to absorb through sustained observation and direct interaction. I have believed this since the beginning of my career, and I believe it now with even greater conviction. More important than the company you work for is the person you work under. The mentors I encountered in my formative years gave me something that no formal curriculum could have replicated: They showed me how to think about the future before the future had confirmed itself. They showed me that innovation is not a technical skill. It is a posture. It is a willingness to hold an idea before the market has validated it and to keep building it anyway because the vision is clear enough that external confirmation feels secondary. Working alongside people who share your dreams, who push your thinking rather than accommodate its limitations, is one of the most significant advantages you can have in any career at any stage. A strong leader does not simply command. A strong leader dismantles the ceiling above your thinking. They ask questions that force you to confront your own assumptions. They challenge you to operate outside the boundaries of what feels comfortable, and in doing so, they expand the outer edge of what you believe is possible. They do not just make you a better professional. They make you a better human being, one with greater resilience, sharper vision, and a more durable will to create something that matters. I remember asking myself repeatedly during those years, if not now, when? If not me, who? That kind of internal pressure, the pressure that comes from being around someone who refuses to accept the ordinary, is what transforms a capable person into a purposeful one. The leader who challenges you to leave your comfort zone is the same one who prepares you for the far larger territory ahead. This goes well beyond technical competence or professional development. It is about becoming someone who chooses difficulty over stagnation, someone who carries vision rather than waiting for it to be assigned. So if you are at the beginning of your path right now, I want you to hear this clearly. Do not spend so much energy worrying about the brand name of the company you are joining or the salary figure attached to the offer. Ask yourself a more important question. Am I being genuinely inspired by the leader I am following? Is this person expanding what I believe is possible? Because that inspiration, cultivated over time in the right environment under the right guidance, is what will ultimately shape not just the career you build, but the person you become while building it. Trust your instincts before the world tells you what to think. If you are under 30, here is the most direct and honest advice I can offer you. Follow your intuition and be willing to explore paths that have not yet been validated by anyone around you. When I was young, I had no formal expertise in technology. I had not studied computer science. I had not worked in any industry adjacent to what the internet was becoming. But I felt something when I first encountered it, a weight, a certainty that this thing was going to change the way the world operated and that the change was going to be enormous. That instinct, raw and completely unverified at the time, became the seed of everything I built. The uncertainties you face today are not obstacles to your story. They are the raw material from which your story will actually be constructed. When you take risks while you are young, the cost of failure is lower than it will ever be again, and the potential upside is effectively unlimited. When I began pursuing my vision, the people around me were not quietly skeptical. They were openly dismissive. They thought the idea was impractical. They thought the market was not ready. They thought I was directing energy towards something that would never produce a meaningful result. But I had already decided, consciously and deliberately, that other people's ceilings would not become my floor. Do not allow the expectations of others to define the outer boundary of what you pursue. If you carry a genuine vision, a real and specific sense of something that could exist, that does not yet exist, pursue it with everything you have, even in the complete absence of external validation. Entrepreneurs are not people who wait for consensus before they act. They are people who move before consensus forms. Without vision, without the willingness to defend that vision against relentless doubt, you are not truly building anything. You are reacting to conditions that other, bolder people have already created. Here is something I want you to understand about risk, specifically the risk you face when you are young. The risks are almost never as large as they appear. I understood early on that failure was not the opposite of progress. It was a component of it. That understanding made it easier to take the first step. And the first step is always the most important one. As I have said many times, if everything feels perfectly ready, you have already waited too long. Move before the conditions are ideal. Learn as the ground shifts beneath you. Adjust as new information arrives. That is not recklessness. That is the only genuinely honest way to build something real. Youth passes quickly. The lessons you absorb by taking risks and trusting your instincts during that season will stay with you permanently. Do not wait for the right moment to come along by itself. Make your moment happen. And remember, when you are young and you carry a real dream, you never truly feel poor. The vision itself is wealth. The energy driving it is worth more than any resource you have not yet accumulated. At 40, precision replaces exploration. When I reached my 40s, the nature of the game changed entirely. The season of broad experimentation, the years of taking wide-ranging risks and trying approaches that frequently failed, gave way to something more demanding and ultimately more powerful. Focus. Sharp, deliberate, uncompromising focus. I had spent the previous 2 decades taking risks, absorbing failures, and building the kind of knowledge that can only come from sustained, direct exposure to real conditions. At 40, I understood clearly that the time had come to stop distributing my energy across many directions and concentrate it with precision on what I genuinely did best. Entrepreneurship is not a single continuous phase. It evolves with you, and the demands of each stage are fundamentally different from the ones that came before. In the middle phase, the critical skill is not creativity or boldness in the way youth requires those qualities. It is discernment, knowing precisely where your real value lies and refusing with discipline to dilute that value with distractions is what separates those who build enduring enterprises from those who remain permanently busy without ever compounding their results into something lasting. People often assume that innovation requires radical reinvention, that to stay relevant, you must constantly be doing something fundamentally different from what you did before. But I have found the opposite to be more consistently true. Real innovation can live entirely within the act of perfecting what you already do well. At Alibaba, we did not launch with a concept that had never existed anywhere in the world. We began with something relatively modest and made it sharper, more reliable, and more genuinely useful with every single iteration. The breakthrough was not the original idea. The breakthrough was the relentless, patient, disciplined refinement of the execution over time. If you want to catch the rabbit, as I often say, do not change the rabbit. Change yourself. Change your approach. Refine your discipline. Deepen your self-awareness. Your goals do not need to shift at 40. Your methods do. This phase also demands something that highly ambitious people frequently resist: the willingness to delegate. Concentrating on your genuine strengths requires honestly acknowledging where your limitations lie and trusting people with complementary capabilities to carry what you cannot carry well. A great entrepreneur is not someone who insists on being involved in every decision. A great entrepreneur is someone who knows precisely where their personal energy creates the most value and who builds a team capable of handling everything else with equal intensity and commitment. If you are in this phase of your life right now, do not scatter your attention. Refine and strengthen what you already do best. That is what will drive your growth forward from here. At 50, the responsibility shifts forward. When I reached my 50s, I understood with a clarity I had not possessed before that the most important work remaining for me to do was not for myself. It was for the generation that would follow. Over the years, I had built something significant. But I had also come to understand that significance is not self-sustaining. It requires deliberate, ongoing investment in the people who will carry it forward, extend it, and ultimately surpass it. Young people bring something that experience alone cannot manufacture or purchase. They bring energy, genuinely unconventional perspectives, and a willingness to question assumptions that older generations have long since stopped examining. They see the landscape differently because they arrive to it differently. As leaders who have been in the field long enough to accumulate real wisdom, our responsibility is not to protect the structures we built. Our responsibility is to give the next generation the tools, the access, the freedom, and the honest encouragement they need to build something even better than what we produced. Real innovation does not happen when organizations hoard knowledge or when experienced leaders insist on maintaining control beyond the point where control serves anyone. It happens when those who have genuinely learned make a conscious decision to share that learning openly and then step back far enough to allow younger minds to experiment without excessive interference. At Alibaba, our most significant growth happened not when I was directing every decision personally, but when I empowered the team fully and trusted them to carry the vision forward with their own energy and judgment. The same principle applies at a generational level. People sometimes ask me why I invest so much time in young entrepreneurs when I have already built what most people would consider a more than sufficient legacy. The answer is straightforward. Passing knowledge forward is not generosity. It is obligation. If those who have genuinely learned do not teach, the cycle of progress breaks. Every generation that comes into its power without adequate guidance from those who came before it has to rediscover lessons that did not need to be rediscovered. That is a waste of time the world cannot afford. Investing in young people is how you ensure that the momentum of innovation does not end with you. It is how you plant the future deliberately rather than leaving it to chance. And remember this, when young people carry real dreams, they are never truly without resources. The dream itself is fuel. The vision itself is the wealth that makes everything else possible. Persistence is not a trait. It is a decision made daily. I have failed examinations. I have been rejected from dozens of positions. I have been told by serious, experienced, and credible people that my ideas were fundamentally not viable. And I have kept going anyway. Not because I was built differently from everyone else. Not because I was immune to doubt or indifferent to difficulty. But because I made a decision repeatedly and deliberately across many years and through many specific moments of genuine discouragement. To treat every barrier as a temporary condition rather than a permanent verdict on what I was capable of becoming. Persistence is among the most essential qualities any entrepreneur can develop. Not the theatrical variety, the kind that exists primarily for an audience and dissipates when no one is watching. The real kind, the quiet, grinding, unglamorous, daily variety that continues moving forward even when there is no immediate reward and no external confirmation that the direction is correct. If you genuinely believe in what you are building, you do not stop because the path becomes difficult. You assess the obstacle, adjust your approach, and continue. The dream does not change. The method adapts. When Alibaba was in its early years, we operated for 3 full years without generating a profit. The critics were not occasional or tentative. They were consistent and vocal, and by the external evidence available at the time, not entirely without reason. The model was flawed, they said. The timing was wrong. The market was not ready for what we were attempting to create. I did not respond to those criticisms by trying to silence the critics or by pretending the difficulties were not real. I responded by continuing to work. What sustained us through that period was not certainty about every individual decision we made. It was an unshakable certainty that if we kept moving, something worth building would eventually emerge from the process. The difference between people who build great things and people who stop at the edge of greatness is rarely a matter of intelligence or access to opportunity. It is almost always a matter of endurance. Most people carry strong ideas. Very few carry those ideas through the extended seasons of doubt, difficulty, and financial pressure that precede any outcome worth describing as genuine success. Perfection is not a prerequisite for action, and it never will be. Movement is. As I say often, if everything feels perfectly ready, you are already too late. Begin now. Refine as you go, and understand that every obstacle you face and refuse to surrender to is not evidence of failure. It is evidence that you are still in the game, still moving, still building, that alone separates you from majority who stop. A unified team is the most durable competitive advantage. When we started Alibaba, our financial position was modest to a degree that most people today would find difficult to believe. We did not have significant capital. We did not have sophisticated infrastructure. We did not have institutional backing or broad market credibility. But we had instead the asset that ultimately proved more durable than any of those things was a team of people who shared the same vision with the same intensity and who trusted each other enough to hold together through conditions that would have caused a less unified group to fracture entirely. I understood very early that no achievement of real scale is a solo construction. Every structure worth building requires multiple people pulling in the same direction with genuine commitment and sustained effort over time. A team that shares a real vision does not need to be managed through fear or through constant oversight. It operates with a self-sustaining momentum because every person within it understands what they are working toward and why it matters beyond their individual contribution. The collective belief becomes a force that no individual, however capable, can replicate alone. In those early days, we were small, we were inexperienced. The competitive environment around us offered no particular advantages and several significant disadvantages. But we had something that money could not purchase, and shortcuts could not manufacture genuine unity. A willingness in every member of the team to contribute beyond the precise boundary of their job description, to remain when leaving would have been easier, and to believe in an outcome that was not yet visible in any of the external data available to us. That collective faith is what allowed us to accomplish things that looked impossible from the outside looking in. Your responsibility as a leader is not primarily strategic or operational, it is human. You must give the people alongside you a reason to believe in the outcome before the evidence for that outcome exists. You must trust them visibly enough that they trust each other with the same confidence. And you must understand with genuine humility that no achievement you construct alone will ever reach the magnitude of what a truly aligned team can produce together when everyone is moving toward the same destination with the same conviction. Find the people who believe in what you believe. Build alongside them. Protect the culture that holds them together. And remember always that real success, in every case without exception, is a collective result. The complaint is the blueprint, one of the most practically powerful principles I have carried throughout my entire career is this: where people complain consistently, opportunity lies. This is not a motivational sentiment designed to make difficulty feel more tolerable. It is a business principle with reliable, repeatable application across industries, markets, and time periods. People complain when something is not working. And when something is not working for a large number of people who need it to work, there is space, very often enormous space, for someone to step in and build the solution. When we were building the early architecture of Alibaba, the commercial infrastructure available to small businesses in China was deeply inadequate. Entrepreneurs across the country struggled to access larger markets, to establish the kind of credibility that would bring customers through the door, to conduct transactions with any meaningful efficiency or security. Most people operating in that environment had accepted the friction as a fixed feature of the landscape, an unchangeable reality they would simply have to work around forever. I looked at the same situation and saw something entirely different. I saw a gap of enormous proportions waiting to be filled by someone willing to do the work. The greatest businesses in modern history were not built in conditions of comfort and satisfaction. They were built in direct response to genuine, unresolved, widespread frustration. When you encounter a complaint in your environment, in your market, in the conversations happening around your business, the instinctive response for most people is to move away from it. The entrepreneurial response is to move toward it, to ask what the complaint is actually revealing about an unmet need, to ask whether you have the capacity, the creativity, and the will to construct a solution. Because the answer to that question, acted upon with consistency and discipline, is how markets are not just entered, but fundamentally transformed. Innovation does not emerge from conditions of general satisfaction. It emerges from friction, from difficulty, from the space between what people need and what currently exists to meet that need. If your environment is already optimized, if everyone around you is content and well served, you have very little room to create something genuinely new. But where people are dissatisfied, where systems are broken, where the gap between what exists and what is needed remains stubbornly wide, that is where your next great opportunity is not merely possible, but waiting actively to be claimed. The next time you hear someone complain about a persistent, unresolved problem, resist the urge to dismiss it as noise. Listen carefully. It may be giving you the most precise business intelligence you will receive all year. Optimism is not passive. It is a force that demands action. I am an optimist, not because I believe the world is free of difficulty or that challenges resolve themselves without effort, but because I have made a deliberate and sustained decision that difficulty does not have the final word on what is possible. From the earliest days of my journey, through every failed examination, every rejection letter, every season at Alibaba when the number did not support continued confidence, I held on the belief that something better was ahead, not as a fantasy, but as an active working assumption that shaped every decision I made during the periods when external conditions gave me very little objective reason to continue. During Alibaba's most difficult years, when revenue was absent and criticism was both abundant and partially justified by the evidence available at the time, what kept us moving was not data. Data did not support our continued effort in any conventional sense. What kept us moving was vision and an unwavering, clear, specific belief that the internet would fundamentally reshape commerce in China and that the platform we were building was positioned to become central to that shift. That belief did not waver because it was not contingent on quarterly results. It was contingent on a longer view of where the world was heading, a view that optimism made accessible when the immediate evidence was discouraging. Optimism is what allows an entrepreneur to act before certainty arrives. It is what allows you to absorb failure without concluding that failure is your permanent address. It is what separates the people who persist long enough to reach a turning point from the people who stop just before it arrives. I have asked myself many times across many difficult years, if not now, when, if not me, who? Those are not rhetorical questions. They are the mechanism by which a genuine, functional optimist stays in motion when everything in the surrounding environment is arguing for stillness. The future does not belong to the most prepared or the most resourced. It belongs to the people who remain in the field long enough, with enough belief intact and enough whistle sustained to meet the moment when it finally comes. That is the practical, operational power of optimism, not sentiment, not performance, staying in the game. Entrepreneurship is service. Everything else is consequence. When I made the decision to build something of my own, my motivation was never reducible to personal financial gain. I wanted to create something that functioned as a genuine service to other people, something that opened doors that had previously been closed, that gave small entrepreneurs access to markets that had always been reserved for those with greater resources, greater connections, and greater institutional support. That mission was not a marketing position. It was the anchor of Alibaba from the very beginning, and it is the reason the company became what it became, rather than simply another business that existed for a while and then disappeared. I believe without qualification that lasting success is inseparable from genuine value creation. A business built primarily around extracting profit will always be limited by the fragility of that single motivation. It has no deeper foundation to stand on when conditions become difficult. A business built around solving real problems for real people carries a purpose that sustains it through every difficulty it encounters, because the difficulty does not erode the reason it exists. It actually reinforces it. At Alibaba, we did not grow by obsessing over our own financial position. We grew by asking consistently and operationally whether our customers were growing. When they succeeded, we succeeded alongside them. That is not a philosophy to be quoted at conferences. It is a mechanism with real and measurable effects. If you want to build something that endures, ask yourself consistently and honestly how your work is actually improving the lives of the people it reaches. Not as an abstract exercise in mission statement writing, but as a practical, daily operational question. Are you making something genuinely easier for someone? Are you solving a problem they actually have? Are you delivering access or capability or clarity that they could not obtain before? If the answer to those questions is an honest yes, you are building on the only kind of foundation that holds over time. And if the answer is unclear, you have important work to do before you attempt to scale anything. The entrepreneurs who leave genuinely lasting marks are not the ones who accumulated the most during their time in the field. They are the ones who created the most real value for the most people, who understood that service is not a soft concept appended to business strategy, but the hardest and most demanding foundation you can choose to build on. True success comes when you positively impact the lives of the people your work touches. That is what separates a business that survives for a while from a business that genuinely thrives. Create value for others. Your own growth will follow. When we founded Alibaba, our focus was never on how to build a large company. The goal, stated clearly and returned to constantly, was to help small businesses grow and connect with the world in ways they previously could not. That was the purpose from the beginning. And that singular, service-oriented focus is what led us to the scale we eventually reached. When you concentrate your energy on creating real and specific value for your customers and partners, the financial results do not need to be chased. They follow naturally from the quality and consistency of what you deliver. Creating genuine value requires thinking beyond profit at every stage of your decision making. It requires asking not just what will generate revenue, but what will make your customers' lives and businesses measurably better. At Alibaba, we operated from a foundational belief that if our customers were satisfied and growing, we would grow alongside them. That created a relationship built on mutual trust rather than transactional extraction. And trust, compounded over time across millions of relationships, is the most durable asset any business can accumulate. Many entrepreneurs make the consistent and costly mistake of focusing primarily on financial return while neglecting the underlying question of whether they are genuinely solving other people's problems. When you become truly indispensable to your customers, when the value you create is specific and real, and not easily replicated elsewhere, they will not leave you for a competitor offering a slightly lower price. The depth of the value you deliver is what holds them. I have always encouraged every entrepreneur I speak with to ask themselves the most important question in business. How can I help my customers succeed? Not how can I grow my revenue? How can I help them succeed? Because when you answer that question well and act on it consistently, revenue is not a problem you will need to solve separately. It solves itself. Act before you are ready. Learn while you move. Fear is among the most reliable barriers standing between where people currently are and where they are genuinely capable of going. I have encountered it myself at every significant turning point in my career, and I will not pretend otherwise. The question was never whether I felt afraid. I felt it clearly and often. The question was always whether I would allow fear to be the deciding factor in whether I acted or stayed still. When I founded Alibaba, the internet in China was largely unproven as a commercial platform. The risks were genuine and visible to anyone who examined the situation honestly. The probability of failure, by any rational calculation available at the time, was substantially higher than the probability of success. But I had already reached a conclusion that I returned to every time doubt tried to argue me into inaction. The risk of not trying was larger than the risk of failure. The cost of a missed attempt was permanent. The cost of a failed attempt was educational. That calculus, made deliberately and revisited consistently, is what allows people to begin before the conditions feel favorable. Here is the truth that most people resist, sometimes for their entire careers. You will never feel fully ready. The conditions will never align themselves perfectly before you take action. The right moment is not a moment that arrives on its own and announces itself clearly. It is a moment you create by deciding to move and then learning as you move. Every critical skill you will need, every adjustment that will turn out to be essential, almost all of it will be acquired after you have already started, not before. Waiting for readiness is not preparation. It is avoidance with a more comfortable name. I was rejected from many positions. I faced setbacks that, from the outside, would have appeared to justify stopping entirely. But I understood, and I understood it early, that fear is a temporary state and that the opportunities missed through inaction compound into losses that cannot be recovered. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the choice to act in the full, clear presence of it. So whatever it is you are waiting for right now, stop waiting. The path forward does not reveal itself in advance. It reveals itself as you walk it, one deliberate step at a time. Start before you are ready. Become ready as you go, and trust that the person you need to become to succeed is the person you will grow into by moving, not by waiting for the conditions to invite you. The insights shared here through the voice of Mindset Radio trace the full arc of a journey, built not on inherited advantage or favorable circumstances, but on repeated failure, sustained persistence, and an unrelenting commitment to creating genuine value for others. The principles are not complicated, though they are deeply demanding in their application. Mistakes are not detours from your path. They're the path itself. The leaders you choose to follow matter more than the organizations that employ you. Youth is the season for risk, taking and experimentation, not for protecting yourself from the consequences of trying. Midlife is the season for concentration, for sharpening what you do best, rather than scattering energy across new directions. And regardless of where you are in your journey today, the most important question available to you is not how you will succeed, but how you can create something of genuine and specific value for the people around you. Fear will always be present. Act anyway. Criticism will always find you. Extract what is useful and keep building. Obstacles will always appear. Treat them as the opportunities they consistently turn out to be. The future does not belong to the most talented or the most fortunate. It belongs to those who stay in motion, who maintain their belief through the long seasons of difficulty, and who refuse to let what is temporary convince them that it is permanent. When you finally reach what you have been building toward, you will understand that every difficulty you faced and refused to surrender to was not standing in the way of your success. It was the process by which your success was being constructed.